You're losing a game you don't even know you're playing. Every day you make moves on an invisible board, sacrificing pieces that matter for victories that don't. The most DMing part? You haven't even realized what's at stake. Your life is a chess match, but not the elegant kind played in hushed rooms between calculating minds. This game unfolds in the shadows of your consciousness, with rules you never learned and consequences you can't escape. And you've been playing it wrong all along. The board is set before you now. The pieces are in position. But there's one brutal question you've avoided asking. Do you even know which piece you are? Most people live as pawns, expendable, limited, moving forward because that's all they know how to do. They chase promotions, relationships, status symbols, believing that advancing is winning. But what if the truth is darker? What if you're not the pawn but the king all along? And what if in your rush to conquer the board, you've left yourself exposed, vulnerable, one move away from checkmate? Let that sink in. You are the king. Not because of your strength or speed or cleverness. You are the king because without you, everything ends. And yet you've placed your value in external pieces, validation, achievement, appearance, things that can be taken from you in an instant. You wake up each morning obsessing over how to control the board when you can't even control your thoughts. You've become so fixated on winning that you've forgotten what you're defending. And that's not strategy, that's chaos. True strategy begins in silence. It starts when you recognize that not every glittering piece deserves your protection, that not every move forward serves your purpose. The master player doesn't begin by studying the opponent. They start by understanding their king, their essence, their position, their vulnerability. But you haven't done that work. You've been too busy appearing strong to acknowledge where you're weak, too occupied with impression management to build internal fortification, too concerned with the game's appearance to master its essence. So here's the question that should have shaken you years ago. What are you truly defending? Don't tell me your career. Don't tell me your status. Don't tell me your reputation. Those are smoke and mirrors. What matters is what remains when everything else is stripped away. Your mental equilibrium, your emotional stability, your core principles, your sense of purpose. That's your true kingdom. That's what cannot fall. But you've ignored it, covered it with empty achievements and external validation, as if success were measured in applause rather than inner certainty. You've forgotten that the world can cheer while you crumble from within. What good is capturing the queen when your king stands exposed? You've played this game as if you were untouchable, moving boldly across the board without hesitation or doubt. But the king doesn't win by attacking. The king wins by knowing when to advance and when to hold position, when to sacrifice a piece and when to protect the core, because the king who moves without thinking dies. When you betray yourself to fit in, it's like leaving your king in check. When you prioritize others' opinions over your own truth, you're abandoning your most valuable piece. When you choose pretense over authenticity, you're losing before you've even made your move. And still you wonder why peace eludes you. It's painfully simple. You've built fortresses on the outside while your interior castle lies in ruins. You've mastered external manipulation but forgotten the most obvious truth. The real game unfolds within. You don't need to control others. You need to understand what you're willing to sacrifice and what you're not. Only someone who truly knows themselves can create a strategy that doesn't destroy them in the process. Only someone who recognizes their worth can distinguish between the essential and the expendable. Those who don't know their value end up trading everything for nothing. And the most devastating part, they often do it with a smile, calling it ambition, calling it success, calling it progress. How long will you continue surrendering your principles just to belong? How long will you disguise your anxiety as drive? How long will you mistake that constant internal noise for achievement? This isn't about winning. It's about preserving what preserves you. It's about protecting your core even when everything around you falls apart. Because when the king falls, the game is over, no matter how many other pieces remain on the board. Here's a brutal truth no one tells you. The most dangerous opponent isn't across the table. It's the voice inside your head. That internal saboteur doesn't shout, it whispers. It tells you you're not ready, you're going to fail, better stay where you are. And you listen because it sounds familiar, because you've been hearing it for so long you think it's you, but it's not. You're the one who hears it. And if you're the one who hears it, you can change the message. Real leadership doesn't begin when you command others. It starts when you command your mind, when you silence the voices of doubt, when you choose clarity even surrounded by chaos. Because chaos doesn't disappear, what changes is your capacity to navigate it. And that capacity is built from within. The world celebrates those who win, but it respects those who survive without losing themselves. Because success without peace is just an empty echo, an applause that fades, a crown heavier than it's worth. So ask yourself, do you want to win, or do you want to endure without betraying yourself? Only one path leads to freedom. This isn't about becoming invulnerable. It's about knowing your vulnerabilities and protecting them wisely. It's about recognizing you're not immune to pain but can remain centered through it. It's about constructing a shield not of arrogance but of unshakable principles, of purpose, of clarity. When you know what you're defending, you don't surrender at the first attack. When your center is clear, external turbulence affects you less. When you safeguard your king, the battle's chaos matters less. True power isn't displayed, it's felt. It's that quietude that unnerves those who live in noise. It's that steady gaze that says, I know who I am and I won't be moved by tactics or threats. When was the last time you sat with yourself and asked what truly matters to you? What you're willing to fight for? What you refuse to compromise? Because until you answer that with complete honesty, you'll continue moving by reflex rather than strategy. And those who move by reflex invariably lose. The real game isn't won by who advances most aggressively, but by who knows what they won't surrender. Do you know your non-negotiables? Because if you don't, any offer will tempt you, any voice will sway you, any setback will destroy you. But they don't have to. Failure doesn't define you. What defines you is what you choose to protect when everything else is at risk. Your mental clarity, your emotional balance, your integrity, your purpose. That's not selfishness. That's strategy. That's leadership. That's maturity. The king who survives isn't the fastest or most visible. He's the most conscious. The one who doesn't sacrifice the essential for the urgent. The one who doesn't trade inner peace for external validation. The one who doesn't chase recognition because his value doesn't depend on being seen. Here's another painful truth. If you don't protect your king, no one will do it for you. You are the center, and if you fall, it doesn't matter how many other pieces remain, the game simply ends. So start today, not with grand gestures or dramatic decisions. Start with one simple step. Recognize yourself. Look inward. Ask with unflinching honesty, what am I neglecting that deserves my protection? Because when you know you won't play by habit, you'll play with intention. And at that moment, even if you move just one space, you'll have won more than those who advance aimlessly across the board. True victory isn't about winning the game, It's about not losing yourself in the process. Many mistakenly believe that protecting what's essential means isolation, that safeguarding your inner kingdom requires building walls, that self-knowledge is defensive rather than offensive. In reality, it's an act of power. Self-knowledge doesn't make you fragile, it makes you dangerous. When you know what you refuse to lose, when you have clarity about who you are and what you'll never permit, you become unpredictable to a world that thrives on manipulating those without roots. Look carefully at those around you. Most act from fear, from lack, from that persistent feeling that something's missing. And what does that create? Controllable pieces. Touch their ego, they collapse. Deny them approval, they kneel. Offer validation, they sell out. But there exists one type of player who doesn't follow these rules, the one who's done the inner work, the one who's confronted their shadows and made peace with them. You can't dominate that person. You can't seduce them with applause or threaten them with rejection because they've experienced it all internally. They don't need to belong, they already belong to themselves. This creates a stark contrast between those who seek power and those who seek clarity. The first remains enslaved to their hunger, the second finds freedom in their purpose. Everyone wants power, economic power, influence, control over others. But authentic power isn't external or accumulative, it's internal. And most disturbing of all, it's not obvious. True power doesn't create noise or demand attention. It's the power to face life directly and declare, "This is who I am, this is my worth, this is what I won't negotiate." It's the power of not needing to broadcast your strength because your consistency proves it without words. What feeds this inner power? Clarity. A clarity that can't be purchased or inherited. It must be built, cultivated, earned through struggle. Because clarity isn't knowing what you desire when everything's going well. It's holding fast to your purpose when everything collapses. It's facing the storm and saying, "This doesn't change me." It's watching everyone run while choosing to stand your ground, not from stubbornness, but from knowing precisely where you stand and where you're headed. And that terrifies those still lost. Clarity is a weapon that disturbs because in a world where everyone questions everything, the person who walks with conviction shines like a threat. They remind others that direction is possible, that purpose is attainable, that meaning exists, if you're willing to stop living for others. But few share this truth because if you knew you'd cease being manipulable, you'd stop buying what you don't need, working at what you hate, tolerating what kills you inside. That's why society rewards compliance and punishes lucidity, because the compliant are pawns, the lucid are kings. The king lacking clarity is merely a disguised pawn. He believes he commands but moves reflexively, panicking when he loses a rook, crumbling when a queen falls, because his center isn't within himself but in what surrounds him. But the king possessing clarity can stand alone on the board, surrounded by silence and opponents, yet still move with purpose. Take care. Clarity isn't arrogance. It's not presuming to know everything. It's having the humility to acknowledge what you don't know and the intelligence not to act from that place. It's discerning when to speak and when to remain silent, when to advance and when to wait, when to give everything and when to withdraw to preserve what can't be sacrificed. Self-knowledge extends beyond understanding your strengths. It means recognizing your limitations, blind spots, obsessions, and wounds. Because if you don't see them, others will exploit them. If you're unaware where it hurts, anyone can press precisely there. But if you know, if you acknowledge and address these vulnerabilities, they no longer control you. You no longer react. You choose. This represents the next level of the game, reserved for those who choose rather than react, those who decide rather than respond, those who dictate their moves rather than being dictated to by circumstances. Only the latter truly lead, not others, but themselves. Here's a searing truth. If you don't decide your life, others will decide it for you, not necessarily with malicious intent, but simply because empty space gets filled. If you don't fill your life with purpose, the world will fill it with noise, consumption, comparisons, expectations. Without realizing it, you'll live a borrowed existence, one that sounds impressive but isn't yours. And what value is there in winning a game whose rules you didn't write? That's not victory, that's decorated servitude. Success with the aftertaste of defeat. The tragedy is you may not recognize it until too late, until you wake one morning, face your reflection, and can't identify who you are or why you do what you do. That moment, that instant of disconnection, is the true checkmate. No move can save you once you've lost contact with your essence. This is where balance becomes crucial, another forgotten pillar of internal leadership. Knowing yourself isn't enough. You must nurture yourself. I'm not referring to superficial indulgences, but to protecting your center, nourishing your mind, feeding your values, filtering what enters your consciousness. Your mind is fertile soil. Whatever you plant there will grow. What are you cultivating? Clarity or distraction? If you consume content that diverts you, listen to voices that frighten you, compare yourself to curated personas, how can you expect peace to flourish within? Peace won't grow, purpose even less. Eventually, everything decays, first invisibly, then visibly, until the board appears impressive from outside while you know you've already lost the internal game. That's the greatest tragedy, because external circumstances can be rebuilt, but when the king falls within, everything else becomes mere decoration. So protect your center, your mind, your equilibrium, your purpose. Not from weakness, but because you're essential. Lose yourself and everything else loses meaning. If doubt persists, ask yourself this final question. How many decisions in your life have stemmed from fear rather than clarity? The answer reveals whether you're playing strategically or merely moving pieces. If you've stayed with me to this point, if you've absorbed every word without turning away, it suggests something profound, that somewhere in your consciousness, a voice whispers, "This is meant for me." It's no coincidence. It's your awareness urging you to awaken because you stand at a critical juncture, that decisive moment where you either continue living a borrowed existence or finally take command of your board. Have you ever felt like you're advancing but without direction, as if each achievement feels less fulfilling, each victory merely conceals an underlying emptiness? It's not that you're mistaken, it's that you're disconnected. When you don't know what you're defending, everything begins to feel insignificant. And that kills you gradually. The soul doesn't perish from a single blow. It withers from living daily without purpose, from neglecting the essential to pursue the urgent. The greatest irony? You likely already possess everything needed for transformation. You already know it. You've already felt it. But you fear making it real. Fear that action means no return. And you're right. There's no going back. Once you begin living with clarity, you can't accept less. That frightens you, but it's also liberating. True freedom, beautiful freedom, the kind available only to those brave enough to look within and declare, "This is who I am, and I will never betray it." So here's the final question, the one you can't ignore. Will you continue moving thoughtlessly, or will you begin playing with intention? This isn't about motivation. It's not about inspiring music and empty assurances that you can accomplish anything. It's about confronting yourself and finding the courage to persist. It's about building from within, principle by principle. It's about learning to decline what sounds appealing but distances you from your truth. It's about walking purposefully while others run aimlessly. If you truly comprehend this, the board no longer intimidates you. You no longer play to please, no longer move pieces out of fear, no longer sacrifice your king for validation. You play to protect what matters. You play consciously, and that makes you internally invincible, untouchable, unstoppable. Don't tell me you can't. Don't tell me it's too late. What you need isn't time, it's decision. Do one thing today. Protect your center, even with a small choice, even if unnoticed, even if seemingly insignificant. Because you're actually doing the most important thing, securing your inner kingdom. This doesn't end here. From now on, every move you make will differ because you no longer move just to move. You move with purpose, and that separates you from the crowd. What awaits isn't a game. What awaits is life lived by someone who has finally remembered who the true king is.